Have you ever looked at someone who is a corporate practitioner or a business owner and was curious about their journey, what they've experienced, their passion projects, and the practices that have helped them be successful in their work? The Formula Exchange podcast is the place where the inner genius of our guest meets your curiosity. Our podcast episodes are quick chats geared towards revealing the person behind the LinkedIn profile. You'll quickly discover and learn about their journey, what they're doing, and our guest will leave you with a formula to help you conquer your next. I'm your host, Dr. Lenny Cook. Wilson is the lead brand specialist for Union Horse Distilling Company out of Kansas City, Kansas. It's a Midwest born and raised family producing big things in small batches. During this episode, Wilson shares the what, where, why, and how Union Horse produces its line of experiences to share. Formula Exchange audience, meet Wilson Torres. Hey there, Wilson. How are you?
Hey, Dr. Len, I'm doing really well. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning to you. I'm doing very well as well. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to just talk a little bit more about you and your journey and what you're working on, okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just for the sake of our audience and bringing them up to speed, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, your career journey, and how you've come to do what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to do so. So I started off in the tech industry. I worked for a couple little small companies like Apple, Google, Hewlett Packard, in a sales role as far as whether it be a hardware through, Apple and Hewlett Packard, then in a service-based product in Google. In sales, obviously. So going out, obviously, in the Chicago market, Miami markets, depending on which company I was working with at the time, and basically evangelizing, what all was Apple, what all is Google, and what it was Hewlett Packard. And then I got to a point in my career where I wasn't having any more fun. You would think that it's endless fun working for such, the companies mentioned, but it was more about the people that I was surrounded by, the people I was engaging with. They all seemed the same, with all due respect to each and every one of them, but all were brilliant people. They were all very intelligent people, all very different people, but nothing was truly different about them. They all had the same CV, top schools, they got the top degrees, and so it was almost the same language, the same ideas, the same conversations over and over again. It was just in a different package as far as ethnicity and diversity, which I can appreciate, but there was nothing beyond the exterior. So I took a step back and I call it a professional sabbatical, in the sense where I'm going to take about 6 to 8 months, and I'm going to reflect. I'm going to rest. I'm going to recoup. I had some health issues that I wanted to take care of. Nothing, detrimental to my health or anything, but just like more structural. So I'm like, I'm going to take the time and really figure it out. So on Friday nights, I would normally go to Ditka's down off of Chestnut in Michigan, down here in Chicago. And I would go have a couple cocktails and have a meal and then go home, call it, be ready for the weekend. So I went to Ditka's, had the same cocktail, an old fashioned. And as I was drinking out of it, that prompted a question. I was like, what makes this cocktail my favorite? What makes this cocktail so good? So I went down the rabbit hole. So I started talking to the bartender, who I've known for many years. His name was Jason, shout out to him. And started asking. I was like, well, what's this part? What's that part? And so on and so forth. Very basic, very classic cocktail I came to learn. Never thought about it before until then. And that's when I felt that I was like, okay, maybe this is up my alley. Not because I'm, I was like, well, why would you make such a change to get into the spirits industry? And I was like, well, I do enjoy a good cocktail. I do enjoy them with friends and family. It's probably the best icebreaker known to man. So it's like, why not? So I reached out to a career coach of mine when I attended Loyola here in Chicago. And He's like, I happened to meet this couple at a community event. Why don't we give them a call? So he gave him a call. They called me. They were in Austria for holiday, as they call it, and they were the husband and wife ownership and of Koval Distillery here in Chicago, the first post-prohibition distillery here in Chicago. We talked a couple times, and then a week or two later, via FedEx, I got an offer letter to join them as their inside salesperson, and that began everything. I learned, I cut my teeth there, as you would say. It's a lot of different hats, but I got to learn the science, I got to learn the art, and I was able to really impart what I learned from previous positions into helping them continue to develop and establish Koval as a local, but also an iconic brand here in Chicago. So that's how that started.
And Wilson, that's really fascinating, because I hear you saying that you stepped away from, the tech industry, right? Yeah. And there's a science and an art there. There is. Into the whiskey making and whiskey selling industry. Correct. And you kind of just mentioned the science and the art there, right? So I guess specifically, what type of experience or skills serve as the bridge between the two? Like what from your past really helps you with what you're doing now?
My willingness to keep learning, I feel. It's not so much having a specific intellect or, I think it has mattered to be truthful to yourself, and we're learning every day, and that's staying true to that, and just being open to it, whether it be learning of ourselves and learning more and more what we do, what I do. It's my willingness to stay open to that and understand that we still have weaknesses, even though we have a lot of strengths, and those weaknesses come with that learning curve, So I feel that's the one thing that really stands out. It's my willingness to just keep learning and wanting to learn. So that's where that lies.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's not an easy market. It's not an easy industry, but if you're willing to stay true to yourself and open to its development, then yeah.
So you mentioned something, and to me, I think about, whiskey, spirits, fun, right? You mentioned you were no longer having any more fun, right? So I imagine the challenges that you're experiencing now in your new position creates the opportunity for the learning, right? And the growth and the personal development. Beyond learning, what's something that you're super passionate about that translates into your current work?
History.
History.
Yeah, it's the history of it. Whiskey in the United States, not to go into it too much, it was something that it wasn't just, hey, let's make whiskey. It was something to do with a surplus of how those that settled before us, used, when they harvested their crops, there was a surplus of what they didn't sell, and it was going to waste. So this was sort of a sustainable way to keep themselves going. This is a very early Environmental Sustainability Act that isn't even considered that now, but part of the whiskey history. So the history of whiskey is what really has really enraptured my head in a sense, and obviously learning, and that's what contributes and fuels the continuous learning and interest to learn about what we do. The fun, people think it's all glamorous. You go out, you sell whiskey, you taste whiskey every day, you have cocktails, and you're buying cocktails, you're going to whiskey events. These are anywhere between 10 to 15 hour days. Now we're in the season, September through December. This is the season of whiskey, and this is when all of the complete industry, not just whiskey, this is their Christmas. This is when we do our best. So but the history of it is what really drives. But not only the history, but where it's going to in the future. That's what I'm in the middle of right now. I am part of this, I can say this reinvigoration of the industry of distilling, or revitalization, I should say, where whiskey is 200 years old, but I'm part of a 10-year-old distillery that's coming into its own and now competing with those 200-year-old companies or recipes. So that's really the excitement. History drives me, but what really feeds, my smile and feeds me, and keeps me going is we're the same trajectory, so.
I don't have the depth of knowledge about whiskey as you do. Like I would have never thought about the history of it,
Mhm.
nor the innovation that's happening within the industry and within, the product lines and whatnot. Right. So that's really fascinating to just hear from you and hear you share. I'm curious, what's one of those things that people misunderstand about the slow game, right? Because you're a part of a product that has all of this history, and is probably its very own personality and identity within the industry itself.
Mhm.
So standing out as a brand, it may take some time. So what's one of those things that people misunderstand about the process of achieving that?
Yeah, it's it's the time that it takes to achieve the intent behind the brand. Our intent is flavor. One thing that we all have a common denominator in this industry is that we all make alcohol, and that's guaranteed at the end of the process. Whatever extra step or less step or whatever special thing you do in your distillation process, that's great, but the main thing that people don't understand is the time. It's really a matter of allowing the spirit, because once it's distilled, it's a living thing because it goes into another living thing, the barrel made of wood. And just because it's cut down and shaped into staves and those staves make barrels doesn't mean that its life is cut. It's still a livable piece of organism, which is what imparts its color and some flavors into what we distill. So, but it's a matter of time and letting time and Mother Nature take its course, and bringing it along to, in the end, whether it be 3 years, 4 years, 5, 6, 10, 12, depending on the brand, reaching that intent that we had once we started the process. So
Yeah.
it's the time that really, and then also what people misunderstand is that the guys before us, those distillers before us, those that started this 200 years ago, they didn't. This is not their vision. They were just trying to keep afloat and trying to innovate as raw as possible. And as we continue to do that now the innovation is completely different. It's amazing. It's progressed, but it's still whiskey at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So coming from being the owner of a marketing agency, I know your approach to reaching your audience is a little bit different than many other products out there because there's some regulations surrounding,
Correct.
putting your brand out there and a little
Mhm.
bit more sensitivity in terms of what audiences you can get in front of.
Correct.
So I imagine you have to it requires a great deal of building relationships with your customers, becoming a part of their routines and their celebrations, and just relying on customer word of mouth, right? How do you cultivate those type of collisions with people who grow to love and appreciate your brand?
It's a very good question. Thank you for that. I feel you treat it like you would any relationship that you have. Doing what I do in this market, Chicago, is, I call it the beast, because this is one of those primary markets that many distilleries want to get into because of the culture we have here in Chicago. Is that we're a beautiful city. We have great restaurants, great bars, great experiences across the board.
Wonderful
So
food. I used to live in Chicago, actually. Yeah. Mhm.
whereabouts, if I may?
The South Side.
On the
So I
south side.
went to undergrad in Lisle, and then I relocated to the city for a little bit before returning back to.
Was that
So
Benedict in
Benedictine, yes, yeah,
I know my city.
yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things that, that being said, Chicago is a relational city. Um, it's not a transactional city. We're not here working deals. We're here doing it the Chicago way, and that's handshakes, face to face, and keeping your word, and working hard. You know, it's a blue collar culture, but it's a white collar, you know, exterior, in a sense where, you know, I approach every one of my accounts or anyone as a relationship. It's a friendship. It's a partnership. Um, there are over 5,000 bars and restaurants in Chicago alone. That's just within the city limits. 2 million people. You can't be everywhere. I mean, there are brands, those 200-year-old brands, they're everywhere, but that's because that's who they are and they're able to do that. For brands like me, it's actually an advantage because now my relationships with those 200 to 300, you know, places within the city limits alone are friends of mine, are relationships. You know, these are people who I do business with face to face. These are people that if they have an issue or they have a concern, call me directly. You know, it's not just call this 1-800 number and they'll figure it out for you. Oh, you need a credit? Yeah, just, you know, we'll get you on the back end or something. No, this is a true relationship. And that's how I approach it. And then those who, you know, and that's just with my customer base, but those individuals that you spoke of or that become fans and, you know, treat them just the same. I treat them like friends. They're friends of the brand. And as you said, they are an extension of who I am as a salesperson or brand ambassador or market manager for my current distillery. You know, they serve as an extension of that, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it be on the online, whether it be in the bars, whether it be at whiskey shows or just in conversation or within one another's homes. Sometimes they bring a bottle of my brand or they bring a bottle of something else and they end up trying my brand in exchange, you know. So it's a cultivation of relationships, period. It's community, you know.
That's really powerful. You said a phrase that I don't think I've ever really heard. I've kind of heard it in theme, but not just the actual wording of it. You said friends of the brand, right? Like they are friends of the brand. It's a relationship. It's cultivated. For you, what's one of the most important things that you've learned as been a part of a smaller distillery, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the relationship building, but what are some additional things that you've kind of learned along the way?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Maybe one of the things that I've learned about more is that you're more humble heading into a meeting or presentation or when you go to a larger show, a whiskey show, a tasting event, and you're not one of those, you're not in the top 5 of the brands that people are looking ahead and like, I want to see this, I want to see taste this. And I mean, I had to take a little rejection, you know, and that's okay. I have no problem with no, because it's not personal. But when you believe in something as much as I do in my current distillery and the products and the whiskey that we make and experiences we offer with it, you know, it was hard for me to deal with at first because I felt that it was like we have something that is just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
So I just had to really learn to be more humble about it, and just as thankful for those that do become fans and those that do become friends of the brand and mine. You know, so not too difficult, but it was like, man, I know I have something good here, and I'm not just, you know, I'm not just saying that, you know, I'm not. We were the brand that people, when I was like, oh, the line's too long to go try this brand and that brand. Let's go see what else is. Oh, let's try this guy, you know, or whatever. And they end up staying for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even coming back a couple times alone or coming back with people. It's like, try this. Yeah. As I saw that, you know, development, then I'm like, okay, it was just a matter of time.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, that first year it's tough because I'm like, come on, you know.
So I guess, and we're going to kind of shift into your formula, right? Your personal formula. You kind of hinted around this, and maybe we can just kind of explore this a little bit deeper, or we can just shift it and go whatever direction you want to go. But you mentioned being able to, you know, handle the rejection because you really believed in what you were building, right? So I guess my question would be like, what's your formula for building an exceptional brand? Like what makes your brand exceptional? And of course, everyone doesn't have a whiskey, you know, product or whatever, but maybe if they have a product or a business that they're trying to push, or even if they're just a player within a company or something like that, like How can you make something exceptional? What's your formula for that?
I take ownership of it.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, it's not mine. I don't have any equity in that sense, but I do have an equity when it comes to my personal being. That's the whole blood, sweat, and tears thing. You know, I take ownership. I treat it as if it were mine. Um, but that doesn't come easy either. I mean, and that also, you really have to be really entrenched into the brand and really truly passionate, not about just whiskey, but that specific brand. Because if you don't, you can't sell it if you don't like it yourself, because it's going to come across that way. You're not going to, that effort's going to go, it's a waste of breath. It's a waste of time. So really having a sense of ownership is what really drives me personally in establishing a brand. And also, and then building as you would to build, for instance, a tree when it's planted, it has a set base, and then it's set into a ground, obviously, and then within time it starts to spread out. It doesn't happen fast, it happens with time, but as it's spreading out down, it's growing up. It's a simultaneous thing that's really crazy. You're just going up and down. Same with developing a brand. I am taking ownership, so I'm taking root within this distillery, and I'm learning the processes. I'm enjoying it. I'm sharing it, and then as that is happening, the more I put into it, and more care I put into it, mind and hands-on, mind you, it starts to obviously grow up. So it's starting to go up, and then what do trees do? They branch, and these are the branches that I call the communities. Chicago is made up of 77 neighborhoods. Every neighborhood has its own little thing. Now, am I going to be able to reach into all 77? Maybe not, but who knows? So it's just a matter of really allowing myself to go where the reach is and where to sprout, where to, but it really does take that sense of ownership and true passion. And then kind of like letting it take its course, and within due time, the more you feed it, the better it gets. The more people you talk to, the better. And it's a matter of education. It's not really just saying, hey, try my whiskey. No, try my whiskey, please. Tell me what you think about it. It's not just say, hey, I have the best thing, try it. No, it's like, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. So that
Wow.
you know.
So you're doing so many things right on a psychological level, right? You're taking ownership of it, so you're invested. But as you gave the analogy of the tree, when you connect with other people, you're you're causing them to be invested as well, and there's like a reciprocation that's happening, right? And then with your tendency to give it time, you're allowing those natural dynamics to just kind of take root and continue to grow, right? So that's so many great things that you're doing, just very intuitively right on the relational level. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's
So this is one of my favorite questions to ask during the podcast, right? The question is, what can we do? What can the Formula xChange audience do to help you on your journey?
Be curious, be curious in what whiskeys you drink. You have your favorites. My wife and I have our favorites. We share. She may have one or two more than I do, or I may have one or two less than she does. Not, just be curious, have your favorites, but also venture into other, call it size of distilleries, where they're located. Whiskey can be made anywhere, why not try something different? Try something that's maybe not, $25 or $100. Maybe try something that's 60 for once, or do research. Everything is at our fingertips. So if you're not sure, when you're in the store, you can look it up right then and there and say, well, or you can listen to someone else's recommendation. But the all intended purposes is like when I'm out with on behalf of my current, brand, I'm also advocating for all others the same size. You may not like my price point, but you know what? I do know this brand, and it's maybe $5-6 less, and and it's actually good too. That's what really sets us apart from all due respect, the bigger 200-year-old companies, is that we're bringing everyone along with us because we're all part of that movement of these craft distilleries that are 10 years old, 12 years old, coming to age. Because once whiskey hits 5 to 6 years of age, it's starting to really taste good. So we're making that stride as a cohesive, movement. And it's not just this brand is better or this brand is better. No, we're coming up together. And that's what I really am proud about this community is that we really bring each other along. Now, are there bad whiskeys out there? Sure. But why would I say that? Because on the other end of that whiskey, there's a family and this is their livelihood. So to call it bad whiskey, it's a little rough, but there are some. It's just a matter of time. It's just allowing them to develop and being straightforward and being honest with them in their feedback. Oh yeah, it's good. Don't tell them that because they're just going to keep making it the way they have been and they're not going to do well. So be honest, be curious, be honest, ask questions. And that's one of the lost pieces of art that I am slowly seeing develop again or come back again. It's, when you go to a bar and it's a whiskey bar or just anywhere, you ask for a cocktail or you ask for a pour of whiskey. They don't ask any more questions. They just call it by whatever name it's been given and be done. Well, hey, I really like this. What else is along like this taste profile? Ask your bartenders. They're dying to talk. Your mixologists, anyway, whatever they're called, whatever they wish to be called with all due respect to them, it's just.
I hear you saying make an experience of it, right? Yeah. Like don't just go through the motions and,
Yeah, I can't be everywhere. Yeah, I can't guide you everywhere, but but when you're there, take advantage of it. You're paying for it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, if that person really, if anything, they're selling themselves and their wisdom as well. So at the end of it, instead of it's $15-20, percent gratuity, man, I learned so much. That turns into 30, 40, maybe 50. Who's to say?
Yeah.
It's still,
I love it. I love it. So thank you so much for your time. Audience, if you're interested in being curious about the whiskey that Wilson is talking about, go ahead and head to the Formula xChange website so that you can connect with him directly and you can learn more and have any questions that you may have answered. Wilson, thank you for your time. Okay.
Dr. Lynn, thank you so much again. May you have a very good day and the rest of your weekend ahead.